First of all, I think your analysis was very straight line. History doesn't run in a straight line.
Kid, you cannot tell your neighbor he is stealing ducks when you are stealing funds.
As High Commissioner, I was wrong. As Charandas Prasad, I reacted naturally how any person would have.
I did not come here for that kind of abuse. I did not come here for that kind of abuse. If you're going to go down that road, I'll walk off.
But it's all okay once they're talking. If they were talking, I could not have been here today.
You got ADHD. I got nothing.
Calm down.
I think I've done enough in terms of taking our team out of trouble from losing.
Come on, Lou Taylor. That's good. I'm reading the script now, and the first person that comes to my mind to play a detective,
Yes,
but
the
an
Chinese critic.
erratic
Mikhail
detective is Mikhail Rodriguez.
Why an African slap an Indian? Why a man and slap a woman? Look, how you deal with that? You deal with that.
We must encourage platforms like this because it brings together different people and allows for discussions to take place in our country on a multiplicity of fundamental issues.
Gildarie, you apologizing for something you think I did is wrong. I don't want you to do that, and you should not have done that.
Hi, good evening and welcome once again to the Gildarie Freddie Kissoon show. Wherever you are, whatever it is that you're doing, good evening, good morning. I want to welcome you once again. It's always such a pleasure coming across to you where we discuss matters of importance to the nation and, of course, development at the crossroad. Guyana need to have the kind of conversation would lift the standards of this country. It has been that way for the last year where this program has really made significant inroads and has created debates. Our numbers tell us that at least. I want to say good night, of course, to our co-hosts, faithful co-hosts, always very prompt to this program here where I would have been absent. He's here day in, day out. Well, mostly night in. Freddie Kissoon. And I know that I've been reading your column, Freddie, in the Chronicle, and as always, very mind-tickling. He is in a very short while going to ask some questions because we have within our midst today a gentleman who's no stranger to Guyana, immediate past president of the Georgetown Chamber of Commerce and Industry, Timothy Tucker. He's been one of the voices within the recent years who've been really pushing for more rights within the business community. But not only that, he's been asking some very hard questions, and he has been in those discussions when it comes to doing business in Guyana. Our people, our companies, our entrepreneurs, they need to have a little more say, a little more digging into what our country has to offer. And of course, again, Freddie's going to tell you a little something about Timothy, which we kind of forgot because it's been a very tough year in terms of so many things that happen. And, this show, it goes up and down, never dull moment here. But Timothy would have been one of the persons who would have made this program possible. Freddie Kissoon, I would hand right over to you, sir. You continue the introduction and let's get right into our discussions tonight.
Thank you, Leonard. If you're looking at the program, good evening, good morning, good day, based on different time zones. Our guest this evening is very special to the Gildarie Freddie Kissoon show, and there will always be an open invitation to this gentleman. And why that is so, we have our studios this evening, our very first guest on the Gildarie Freddie Kissoon show. Now that in the bank of memories of the show is a very special motif. The first person that appeared on your show. Therefore, Timothy Tucker could be considered one of the persons who started the Gildarie Freddie Kissoon show. This is his second appearance this evening, and because of that special motif, there will always be an outstanding open invitation to Timothy Tucker. So we finish a year, and as we go down the months to come, Timothy Tucker, if he agrees, will be here. You will always have a memory of your first guest. Now, there are things that are going to come out of this program. I'm asking you one particular dimension of this program, which is an adumbration of Timothy Tucker that has implications for the economy of this country and concerns directly, not indirectly, concerns directly the leadership of Guyana and the business community. When Mr. Tucker gives or offers the revelation, I will ask you, Leonard, and I will ask you, please pass this information on to members of the government, the business community. It is a damnifying adumbration statement by Timothy Tucker. I didn't know about it. We were chatting in the studio, and he made this revelation, which Leonard Gildarie said he noticed on Timothy Tucker's Facebook page. Let me tell you what this revelation is about, and we'll hand the floor over to Timothy Tucker. I did not know that the majority of the oil companies or company-related companies do their banking at Nova Scotia, the Bank of Nova Scotia. Well, Timothy Tucker will tell us that the Bank of Nova Scotia doesn't seem to be operating in a friendly manner. If, according to Timothy Tucker, that bank has the majority of foreign exchange and it's an unfriendly bank, then without exaggeration, without any grammatical expansion, Guyana's economy would be in trouble. Our guest this evening, as you know, because we talked about it so many times the past 5 minutes, is past chairman of the Guyana Chamber of Commerce. And because he's past president, he sits on the council of the Guyana Chamber of Commerce. Timothy, our first guest, you're special to this program.
Well, thank you very much.
I'm shuddering to think about what you're going to say about what the Bank of Nova Scotia is doing. You will have, I assume this is your obligation to bring this up with the business community and the government of Guyana.
Well, once again, thank you very much. Appreciate you having me again. Even though the last time I was here, I was in the full capacity as being the Chamber's president. I'm now its immediate past president. So thank you very much. And I must say congratulations on your achievement. 1 year, like any business, especially in Guyana, you are actually doing a lot of work for the Guyanese people. You're bringing a lot of things to light. You're bringing a lot of education to the people. You're bringing a lot of information to the public across the world, and people understanding more the spotlight is given on Guyana. More important are your roles in actually disseminating the correct bits of information to the public. And, you know, when it comes to the banking sector, everyone that has ever heard me speak at any forum know that I have a lot to say about the banking sector. I don't believe that the banking sector is pro-business in terms of, you know, aiding those small and medium enterprises getting in and growing. We don't have a system in the country that helps the small and medium-sized businesses grow to their full potential and capacity, especially in a booming economy like Guyana. We have seen this over the last maybe few decades. Of course, if you don't have, you know, a big piece of property or something heavy as collateral, you know, you can't go to the bank to get the money to fund an idea, a vision, a business, even a business that you know that you're renting a spot and growing and you can't get the funding to really go after. So it's been difficult to operate in Guyana, especially with the lack of access to finance, and more so, we've all heard about the issues with the foreign currency shortages and everything, and more so that that okay, our banking system, especially the regional and Caribbean banking system, we are affected by the anti-money laundering and the CFATF and all the different regulations that govern banking in the Caribbean. You've heard Prime Minister Motley talk about the injustice in terms of access to finance throughout the Caribbean because of the international laws. Now you have an international bank within Guyana that has the confidence of those multinational conglomerates that bank in Guyana, and they have the access because the banks, their systems that they have in place, are able now to ensure that those multinational corporations are compliant with anti-money laundering laws. So that by any means gives them the confidence to bank with that bank. Now, the issue we've seen, I've raised, Leonard saw my comment on Facebook a few weeks ago, and I've done several in terms of what I believe is the injustices taking place there, because Scotia was trying to exit Guyana, and the sale was trying to happen, was going to two times it was going to Trinidadian banks, and because it would have created a monopoly both with one bank being controlling 51% of the banking sector in Guyana, that the private sector objected, the Bank of Guyana rejected, the government rejected. Of course, it's the Bank of Guyana as the regulator, the independent regulator, that was rejected. Then a second bank came, and that was rejected. Now, mind you, all in the meantime, a local bank was trying to buy it as well. I'm not at liberty to say which bank, but a local bank was trying to buy it, and they were rejected by Scotia. So these banks, the deals were trying to come through from Trinidad, and you would have had the second bank, you'd have two Trinidadian banks controlling over 51% of the Guyana market. Now, that by no means would be acceptable to any regulator anywhere in the world. What we have now is that over the years, the local arm of Scotiabank reports to the Trinidadian arm of Scotiabank. And we have seen the reluctance to really do business in Guyana by that bank. I honestly don't see any, you see Republic Bank, which is a Trinidadian bank, but you see all the other banks really aggressively trying to capture the opportunities in the market. Now, because of their compliance to international standards, they have a natural gravitation for the corporations. So they're loaded with foreign currency. Now you have a demand in which there is a heavy demand for foreign currency for all of the equipment, all the things that have to be imported into Guyana. Now everyone is trying to get access to foreign currency. One bank has most of it. Everybody's trying to get an account. People are being rejected. Businesses are being rejected from opening accounts.
Do you know that for a factor?
Well, we saw it. One of the members of the private sector placed it publicly. 5 months he waited, and at the end of 5 months he was rejected.
Freddie Kissoon, you establish my saying
Timothy Tucker, that's what we say. That's what we say. Any part of the world, in any country, when you're hearing this, it's cause for concern in the government of that country. Timothy Tucker, are you saying, I am not a business person, but what you're saying here is, one, upsetting, two, has national implications for financial stability, and three, maybe illegal. Timothy Tucker, are you saying that this bank, this foreign bank that has a foreign currency system that is more substantial than the rest of the bank, is not prepared to use that foreign currency system to expand investment. I'm asking you, is that illegal or improper?
I wouldn't be able to say whether it's illegal or improper. They probably have their grounds in which they reject the opening of that account or those accounts. But at the end of the day, I think in the spirit, I mean, these are local people operating, working in the bank. Now, that's a bank that is in Guyana, operating in Guyana, and we would believe that they would want to make money. That's the purpose of the bank, to make money. They're not there for charity. But at the end of the day, we're not seeing the level of interest, right? And I don't know if it has to do with the fact that there is a reporting mechanism. I remember when Scotiabank, my family has been a Scotiabank customer since 1983. My father was along, and I remember the aggressive nature of Scotiabank growing up, how they were, they had multiple branches and how they were going out. Now you don't see that level of aggression. And I understand because they were trying to sell, but now they've made a decision that they're going to stay. But the issue is that those of us who've applied to them for facilities to open accounts, there's an adjudication process that has to be done outside of Guyana. And that's coming back to the fundamental issue that the third party adjudication, right, which is done in Trinidad, is humbugging business in Guyana.
And why there cannot be an intervention by the regulator? The regulator is saying we can't do nothing about that, even though the wholesomeness of the Guyanese economy may be under threat.
Freddie Kissoon, let me put in a little context here. Thank you very much.
This may take the whole hour. I find this so disturbing.
It is an interesting thing.
This may take the whole hour.
Look, so I went to the bank recently, and we got to put these things in context.
Not Scotia.
Freddie Kissoon, let me make my point, please.
I'm asking a question.
No, sir.
Well, I thought you had to do with answer the question. Timothy, all you had to do with answer the question.
You always like interject, no interject. All right, just kidding you. Look, I went to the bank recently. I wanted some cash. I was traveling, and I could not get cash US. But there's available monies if you want to do a transfer from one bank to another bank. That's available. But what Timothy has outlined, and correct me if I'm wrong, but my conclusions are based on what you would have said and what I think you would have said. Had that sale been allowed to go through with Scotiabank, and they control it, Trinidad would have been controlling more than 50% of the local market here. And the fact that the oil companies, the majority, my understanding is that the majority of the oil companies are banking with Scotiabank. Who controls at the end of the day the foreign currency in Guyana? Right about now, local people complaining, or local businesses are complaining bitterly of the unavailability of US cash in the market, foreign currency in the market. That's one side of it. Second thing that I would be very concerned about, and the government should be concerned about, is that when you have a control of such a market, what do you do on the government side if you know that what is happening? Because at the end of the day, Trinidad right now is short of foreign currency. Could you very well argue, could I be justified in arguing there's a deliberate attempt by the people who are involved in banking to ship money from Guyana to Trinidad? That's a legitimate concern that would be raised by the business. I'm asking you, Timothy, has there been any evidence of that?
There's a lot of Trinidadian businesses operating in Guyana. Fortunately for them, Guyana is an open market. Mm-hmm. We can't say that over the years that Trinidad has been an open market for Guyanese. We've seen all the restrictions, the non-tariff barriers, the access to do business. You couldn't get into the Trinidad market. They've been able to come in and infiltrate our market, and of course, based on their subsidiaries and everything, they're being able to move money back and forth freely to pull the cash that they need out of the Guyana market. And of course, the business community has complained bitterly about it. We've raised that issue with the governor of the Bank of Guyana. Bank of Guyana actually did some intervention. There now is a process in which you'd have to submit They went so far that they're submitting your invoices to the bank, and then the bank will now take that invoice and send it to GRA to ensure that the goods that you would have imported into the country, it's a match.
Right.
Because people have been creating fake invoices, people have been opening bank accounts and sending money, much larger amounts of money than they actually are supposed to remit. So let's say they bought 10,000 US and they're sending 100,000 US out.
Is there any way for the Georgetown Chamber to know, to ask as an advocacy group to the government? I'm not bashing Trinidad, but the fact is we need to protect what is, and I understand it's open market. Do we know the amount of foreign currency that is being taken out of the country to go to Trinidad, whether legitimate or otherwise?
They can see it. So they can see.
Have you asked for that?
We're not. I mean, we've asked. We went to that meeting. I was the chamber president when we had that meeting with the Bank of Guyana, and the private sector commission was there. I was a member of the private sector team. The then chairman of the private sector commission was shown by the governor the spread. Of course, that is not bit of public information, but it shows the spread of how much foreign currency is moving in and out of the day. Whether it goes to Trinidad, the banks will know. The governor can know, but I don't know if that is public information. But I can tell you that the governor said that they were watching it closely. And, they've intervened to say, well, whether or not it's, bleeding of foreign currency out of Guyana, they've put mechanisms in place to stop that. No, does it really help us here? We have to realize that there are, other than food and a few building materials, most of the stuff we import into Guyana. Majority, we are a country that imports a lot. So our foreign currency dependency is very high. And especially now with oil and gas, with massive infrastructure spending, we've seen a shortage of stone. We see the thousands of trucks that come in. Those trucks are not made in Guyana. We've seen cement. Cement is not manufactured in Guyana. Steel is not manufactured in Guyana. Most of the building, so we have a massive housing drive. We have a massive housing infrastructure, construction. Right. So this is an entire sector. Now we are consuming far more than we are exporting. So the foreign currency ratio is the problem. Now, you got an oil and gas sector that isn't bringing all of their money into Guyana.
I was about to raise that.
They're not bringing all their money into Guyana. They're utilizing what they utilize in the country, right? But the majority of the money is kept out of Guyana. So you would always have that foreign currency shortage, at least for the short term, until we reach to a point in which Guyana really develops its oil and gas sector, that you're gonna have a flood far more. So you're gonna have a reduction in the amount of infrastructure, because we will already build. Let's say in the next 3-4 years, we built out all the roads and everything. The infrastructure spending goes down. In 3-4 years, you'll have more FPSOs operating. You have a greater amount of foreign currency coming into the country, and then you'd have a balance, or even a point where the US dollar should be able to drop compared to the Guyana dollar. But that's not helping us in the short term. That's down the road. So we can have an appreciation of the Guyana dollars based on supply and demand, not government interjecting, but a supply and demand going forward. But right now, we have a high demand for foreign currency based on you have a developing oil and gas industry and a country that is bursting to try and catch up of 20, 30 years of damaged or failing infrastructure.
And Freddie, before you jump in there, you know what's a hard pill to swallow? That you could tell the Guyanese people that you have an industry, the oil and gas industry, which is booming in terms of the initial stages right now. We're in the very early stages, and you don't have foreign currency.
Something is wrong here. I think we have.
How do you tell the people that?
I think we have to apologize to our guests and our viewers. I looked at my clock, and we've been on this subject for 25 minutes, but it's such an absorbing subject. But I think it strikes at the heart of Guyana's development and economy, and I don't know if we're going to move on from this subject. I cannot believe, and Timothy Tucker, I know you're not a political analyst. I cannot believe that there is a bank that is in receipt of foreign exchange. It has more foreign exchange than the other banks, but it is not prepared to spend this foreign exchange in the context of Guyana needs. It is acting as a brake. And are you telling me, Leonard Gildarie and Timothy Tucker, the government of the day, the office, the presidency, and the two ministers dealing with finance, the vice president and the minister of finance, they cannot do anything about Scotia's attitude? You just have to accept
there was
that.
this issue recently that the government says that they cannot control what the banks, it's a basically open market. Remember that there was
it's all a private, they're all private, but they are governed by regulations. I don't know if they're breaching any regulations. And I am assuming that if they are breaching any regulations, the Bank of Guyana would intervene. But yes, Freddie, we're dealing with an institution that is fledged with money, and you have very low new accounts open there. And secondly, you have a system in which access to finance, even at that institution, is much more difficult, right, than any of the other institutions. You can simply go to their financial reports. You can pull their financial reports, which is public knowledge, and you can actually see which banks are lending, how much they're lending, where they're lending, if it's in country, out of country, and that sort of thing. You can see within their financial reports. And it is, how much are they lending to small businesses? If you are fledged with money, why is it so difficult, right? Why is it so difficult lending to foreign business? And you got to understand the adjudication, right? The person who decides when a loan goes over, let's say 20 million Guyana dollars, and the loan goes over there for a business, the adjudication, or I don't know, for personal, or maybe 100 million for business, I don't know, depending on the level, the adjudication happens outside in an economy that is under pressure. So somebody sitting in another country, right?
No, let me put it.
This is important to understand.
I think
this is important. This is important.
Vice President Jagdeo to come here.
This is important.
This is a priority now.
This is important to understand.
You're going to ask him that.
Trinidad, Trinidad, which has a shortage, is making a decision for Guyana. That's what you're saying.
And you have adjudication on a loan for a business in Guyana. Now, the risk factor in a booming economy is different from the risk factor in a fledgling economy. So you're looking at you're in a country that the economy is under pressure, there's conservatism, there's foreign currency restrictions in that economy. But somebody sitting there is making a decision on an economy that is supposed to be flourishing and booming, and is listed as the fastest growing economy. Right?
Timothy Tucker, you and Gildarie are too young to know, but there are two presidents that would not have tolerated that, and there's a third one of which both of you familiar with him. Burnham and Hoyt would not have allowed that if they see Scotia's policy having a negative impact on the economy. And my job is political analysis, not business. And my job is to study these politicians. And I'm telling you, I can't see Barry Jagdeo accepting what Scotia is doing. He either doesn't know, or if he knows, he's working.
But surely,
he's working.
I want to say this, right? And I don't believe it's anything to do with Scotiabank. I believe it's that my issue, and I believe the fundamental issue is
Scotiabank you're talking about?
No. You see. It used to answer to Toronto, and then they moved the responsibilities. It used to answer locally, and then some report in Toronto. But now there's a middleman, And the middleman, to me, is what is causing the problem, which is Scotia Trinidad, which is an independent, because they're Scotiabank TT.
So we're not saying, but it could be construed.
But could it be a conspiracy? Could it be that Scotia in Trinidad is doing this so Scotia in Guyana will eventually sell to Trinidad? Is this a conspiracy?
And I would leave that to you.
We have to have a vice president here.
Yeah, but there's also there's another spin-off from that. I think
we gotta move on.
In the reporting mechanisms, I think you could be able to determine closely which banks are opening new accounts, which banks have decided to take a policy not to open accounts. I think Bank again is supposed to know that.
Well, I can tell you this much, and you're right, Freddie. The vice president actually was the one that pushed that changed the mechanism. I mean, you used to have to bring your parents, birth certificate to open a bank account. Now, anybody depositing less than 500,000 basically bring their ID card and they open an account. They've changed that, so there has been some amount of progress in terms of getting the regular citizen. But as a person from the business community, my issue is still difficult for me to see businessmen trying to go to banks that have foreign currency to open accounts and being denied in this day and age.
Leonard, let's move on. I'm sure our viewers want to hear more things about Timothy. We'll go on a light note and then we'll get back into serious business. When I asked you to come here on CARICOM Day, you said you were out with your family going for a holiday within Guyana. Where did you go?
Oh my goodness.
I just went out of town on the highway. We spent the weekend on the highway.
It was nice.
It was, of course, always pleasure. It was always beautiful to travel Guyana. I mean, when we get off.
So you stayed over the weekend?
Yeah. Once you get out of town.
Wow.
Security was all right?
Yeah. Well, as security out of town is always a good thing. Security in town is an issue. And I mean, of course, I think that if from the business community standpoint, I think that there's a lot to be desired when it comes to security for the businesses again. I mean, I think there's far too many, on the roadways, there's too many accidents. We got to understand that is a security threat. Mm-hmm. Accidents are a security threat because two reasons. Of course, it's damage of property. And of course, in a country where we have a population issue, we have a skilled and unskilled and a labor shortage. Every time we lose somebody on our roadways, we are diminishing our Guyanese population, and we are having less and less people to pull. So when we see people now totally disregard the laws, and the only reason that they can feel that they can totally disregard the laws in this country is because they feel there's no repercussion. The police will do nothing to them. And that is, to me, having disregard for laws is a statement on the leadership.
It's an indictment, sir.
Statement and indictment on the leadership of the police force.
You know the saying in local lingo, cool your head? Have you cooled your head about that statement you made last year about we leave in CARICOM? Have you cooled your head?
I've cooled my head.
We can't leave CARICOM.
Listen. The issue was to bring making that statement was to bring the attention of all of the major issues that we had a lifetime since the creation of CARICOM. Guyana has never truly been has gotten the greatest benefit to CARICOM. Right? We have had our major issues with CARICOM in terms of quoted. Just last week, the CCJ had a breakfast seminar with the Georgetown Chamber of Commerce, and I attended. And one of the major issues is that you have COTED, right, which is the Council for Trade and Economic Development, right? And their issues to deal with trade and, of course, economic development. You have trade issues coming to COTED which is all the ministers within the foreign ministers within the CARICOM, meeting and making a decision, passing a decision to a recommendation to a country. This was about 3 or 4 years ago when Dominica took Trinidad to COTED for their 1935 Phytosanitary Act in terms of honey. And that when
it's coming to honey and it's coming to that sugary topic.
So when they did that, Dominica took them right to COTED. A decision was made at COTED that Trinidad had to remove that, had to change that law, remove that law from the books because it breaches the treaty,
and it hasn't.
And they have not done so. I was in Trinidad last year, and there was a press conference. I was sitting in the room, and both President Ali and Prime Minister Rowley was there, and Prime Minister Rowley actually said that law was only placed for protectionism.
He said that openly?
Openly. He said the law is nonsensical because the distance between Trinidad and Venezuela is so short that bees can fly from Venezuela into Trinidad. So it really makes no sense. It is a protectionism that should have been removed. And he promised at that point in time to remove. Now, subsequent to that, and I must admit, I was nominated, or I've been asked to sit on a commission between, which is the Ministry of Foreign Affairs of Guyana and the Ministry of Foreign Affairs of Trinidad and Tobago has a commission in which I'm the only member of the private sector on both sides, but it's a whole host of governments, different agencies from both countries. And I presented 14 areas in which, 14 barriers to entry to doing business in Trinidad. And I submitted that to that grouping, and they're working on it. And one of the areas was the honey, and they've actually been able to clear a couple. They've cleared about 4 areas out so far, and they're still working on the rest. I was promised that before this year out, we're gonna see a change. But it's work in progress. But we've been promised and promised and promised before. In that meeting with the CCJ, that breakfast seminar, the CCJ actually pointed out that it is very easy to bring cases to them and not have to go through the local court. So the case can be brought straight to the CCJ. I think Guyana has enough grounds and evidence to take any Guyanese business can actually pick this up and do it, because we've lost when the Leparcan shipment, the gentleman who was shipping honey out to another territory and it was transshipping in Trinidad and overseas, he lost substantially. Then we've also have a number of beekeepers and honey producers within Guyana that have had orders, but they can't fulfill those orders because they can't transship through Trinidad. So that's loss of revenue. So there's a number of things there. And if I was Trinidad, I would actually get this fixed before you have a class action or a very big lawsuit or case coming against you when it comes to the Guyanese, because I believe.
And why Guyana? Why you?
Cost.
Cost. Why you never?
Cost.
Why you didn't do it when you were in the chamber? Why no business?
Because
why
the cost
isn't doing
and
it?
that's why. That's one.
They could finance a good lawyer, man.
No. The cost to the CCJ, we've seen with we saw with the court cases with the elections how costly it was. What the CCJ has, what the judges, the president of the CCJ has said to me and he actually shared their new because of COVID and court being done virtually, the cost of taking a case to the CCJ has significantly reduced. So it is now affordable for us to take that case easily, and especially if we have a lawyer that is doing it pro bono, or even if we take a lawyer, a good lawyer, who knows international law, and is actually take that case with the hope of being paid on the damages, or even us paying that lawyer, it's all affordable now to do. And it's actually is something that is on the table. Right? I'm just hoping that that good sense prevail and they settle and they deal with this issue. If not, we will have to take them.
Freddie, here is what I don't get, and what I don't get, Mr. Tucker.
I don't get a lot of things.
I don't understand. I don't understand how the CARICOM headquarters could be in Guyana. The 50th anniversary ended up in Trinidad. Don't explain that to me.
No, that is excellent because that guy, it has to be in the country of the presidency. And Mr. Rowley was Mr. Rowley. But you learned something.
He's the chairman of CARICOM. He's the chairman of CARICOM, but that's only one. But it's a very simple and even without him being, I mean, that is the logical one. That is actually what it is. You have to. It's hosted by the country that the person is chair. But then, if I sign the Treaty of Chaguaramas then I would want to go back on the 50th anniversary to the place where I signed it, right?
But that's an anniversary celebration. But the other thing that
signed in Trinidad.
The other thing
that's only fitting. Yeah. When it was the anniversary of the Olympics, it was held in.
But along the same lines, we have CARICOM headquarters here, and for years we've been disrespected. There's an old story in CARICOM. All of a sudden, we have this newfound wealth, and we continue to be disrespected because when you drag it out, the effect is that you're disregarding what is on the table at quartet and otherwise.
Please see the interview we had with a person who worked for 15 years at CARICOM, Neville December. He and Dr. Mark Curtin were the guests on CARICOM night. And December said, it's incredible that you could have a CSME and yet have that honey protectionism. And he worked there for 15 years.
And I can tell you that myself and Mr. December had multiple discussions and actually back and forth on the issues. And he's very well knowledged on CARICOM, worked there for a very long time. Years, yeah. So we've had many conversations on it. And yes, it's amazing. And look, when it comes to the CSME certificate, right?
Dad tell the lady she got to go in Cuba and get a police clearance because she was a student in Cuba. Don't let me cut you.
And you had a situation in which, and I raised it, and I actually raised it when I was there in January, in one of the meetings. Last year, I raised it in one of the meetings that it is ridiculous because after I had raised all these things, people had started reaching out to me from Guyanese living in Trinidad about them having to annually renew their CSME certificate. And when they would give, and then those who had to get their certificates in Guyana, you have to get it in the country you're from. So you get your certificate from the Foreign Affairs here, you go to work in Trinidad, they're not accepting it. You have to go and apply to the Trinidad Foreign Ministry. Now, apparently they had a law that says that you have to have CSME certificates can only be used in their country if they're issued by Trinidad.
They're going to be issued by the Secretariat.
So they run their own CARICOM in the country.
So it's issued by the Foreign Affairs in the country you're from, right? Because you have to be accredited.
And it's not endorsed by the Secretariat.
And it's endorsed by the Secretariat. I think it's endorsed by the Secretariat. But when you go there, you have to go and get a new one from them. And then you had to go every year and have it renewed. Your CSME certificate is once you've gotten it, you've gotten it. You're now
we're gonna have Mr. December back.
You're now a CARICOM thing, but they've changed. So good news is they've changed the law. They've actually announced to us at our last meeting in May that they've since changed that law, and Guyanese nobody in CARICOM is required to go and have their certificates now issued by them. You could go in with your certificate and work. So we managed to change.
Which is what the CSME is about, free movement of labor.
Correct.
Would you agree with an argument that says that Guyana, because of the new position it's found itself in with oil and gas, has a better bargaining chip when it comes to CARICOM? Are we taking advantage of that? Do you think that we should take a more aggressive stance when it comes to CARICOM and the protection of this country and its people and its businesses?
Absolutely. I believe, and if you go back to the GCCI statement back in 2018, when I I think it was then Prime Minister Rowley and President Granger were going to sign the MOU, and the GCCI objected. I was chair of the Trade and Investment Committee, and we objected at that point in time for signing any MOU because we believed that Guyana was in a better position to actually negotiate with them and force them to remove those non-tariff barriers that they've placed. I have identified 14. They're 18. We got rid of about 4 or 5. They're 18 or 19. We've gotten rid of some. There's still 14 remaining, 13 or 14 remaining. But the issues that we objected then last year, when I was president, we objected for this government renewing that MOU again on the grounds that we are in a much better position to demand better out of both CARICOM and our sister CARICOM states. We've been able to do so with Barbados. We've sat down with Barbados. We've been able to clear some of the hurdles of Barbados. When I signed the tripartite MOU with the GCCI, with the Barbados Chamber of Commerce and the VSB in Suriname, I said to them, I will not sign any MOU until we put all of the barriers to trade on the table and ask private sector to private sector. We do everything in our power to clear the way of these barriers. And then we also put on the table the areas that we do not want you to compete. Right? And we were able to do that. We've been able to agree. It took us some time, it took us 18 months to work through all of that, and we were able to sign. I have submitted those 14 areas to the Trinidad Chamber of Commerce. I've shared all of those 14 areas, and we're working with them. There's a new president there, Kiran Maraj, Mrs. Kiran Maraj, and she's a new president of the Chamber of Commerce there. Before I demitted office, I had a virtual meeting with their board. And I've said, before we talk about any negotiations or any cooperation, these are the things that we want to clear first and foremost. And I believe we've done so from the private sector. And I believe, yes, the government and the president is doing a lot of that. And areas where there's a reluctancy to do, then we can find ways to maneuver around them.
You said you cool your head on that exclamation about we leaving CARICOM. You cool your head on another episode that Trinidad is cheating on the local content law. You cool your head on that one?
I will never cool my head on that because that.
So you think they're cheating? They're going around the local content law?
There are a lot of Trinidadian companies that are working with Guyanese companies and building and helping to build capacity and working in true partnerships. But then there are some that refuse to do so, and they've used the lack of detailed regulation. So the lack of regulation, we have a law, but there's no detailed regulation that actually governs the deeper depth or the deeper dive into those companies. So you got, Class B shares, you got people using, right now you got from rent a citizen to rent a lawyer, right? So you got people here. You got people renting lawyers here.
Rent a citizen, rent a lawyer.
I find it unacceptable that we had a neighbor that when they had a lot of food in the pot, that they never allowed us to go in the pot, or if they throw scraps over the fence. Now that there's going to be people who said they allowed us into the country, but now that we have in our pot, you come in and barge in through the front door, and you're taken out of the pot, and you're being a bully.
Don't be ungrateful to them.
No, Freddie Kissoon, I understand that
they may have a standoff attitude, they may manipulating us, but in times of need,
so does that excuse it?
I know it doesn't excuse, but when Guyana collapsed, those traders were going over there and bringing stuff.
No, but does that explain away what is happening?
They had a fund that bought them exhausted, a CARICOM fund. They have been...
So wait, what happened? Open the floodgates and this
they've been bad to us, but we can't shut...
No, we're not saying shut it up, but should we turn a blind eye and say, come and take what you want?
No, we've been able to shut that door.
We will never leave CARICOM.
We've been able to shut that door or slam that door hard enough that it bounced back open. We're now having sensible conversations. We've had the business community when they were coming in and trying to usurp the private sector and try to rent people and do all kind of on-the-hand business and kind of just completely disregard Guyanese and Guyanese businesses. We've seen a change, a shift in that mentality. No.
Rent a citizen and rent a lawyer going away.
Rental, it's there, and there's work. We're working.
Rent a citizen,
and that was always the reason why the private sector always said that, yes, we want a local content law, but we want a local content secretariat to help look at the law. They have to be able to govern, because we knew this has been said before this law came into place, that you will have the law, we will put the law, and people will become rent-a-citizen. And the rent-a-citizens situation is unfortunate because people don't understand what rent extraction does. The foreign currency shortages, all these different things, this is part of rent extraction, because when you rent a citizen and you have a company that rents a citizen, now you got all of this big company renting one person.
Could you explain to the people what rent a citizen mean?
Rent a citizen is when a company takes a Guyanese, one individual, then give them 51% of that company.
Right.
But they pay them pittance, 5%. Now, 51%, in actual fact, 51% of a $10 million US company, right? If you're $10 million in profit, then you're entitled to about $6 million, right? Whereas you're getting 100,000, you happy with your $20 million a year, 100,000 US, and that company is going away with 9.9 million US, and you are getting just that little bit. Now you're getting a rent. You're renting they're renting an office, or they're renting your building, and they're using your transportation service, and that's all you're getting. When you know by law should be splitting that with them. Now, the purpose of the local content law was we understand that the contract is not the best contract. It's a bad contract. But the only way that we can ensure that money gets across the country is to have it retained in country. So the purpose of local content is the retention of money within the country. Now, when the money is retained, it benefits everyone. If 9-point-something million is going out of the country, only 100,000 is staying here. That 100,000 is converted. That's why you only got 100,000.
Let me ask you directly, Mr. Tucker. Then the question: we went to Parliament and we passed the local content law. I think that's what you call it. And the question to you in the private sector, on your analysis, has it been effective? Has it delivered the way that it should? I want to ask you, and I understand before I go there, before you come in, I understand that laws that are passed, especially like local content, that it's a work in progress because you always have to tweak it to cater for different scenarios. But over to you.
Yeah, listen, the benefits are tremendous. Without the local content law being passed when it did about a year and something ago, a year and a half ago, 18 months ago, without that, we would have not seen the amount of money that's being retained. We would not have seen the capacity building of Guyanese companies. If you look around the amount of Guyanese companies that have built capacity, you have now, there's almost another 30 areas that Guyanese are now building capacity. You have Guyanese owning, being able to do what is called FEED, which is the engineering services offshore. You've got Guyanese being able to do you've got a consortium now about to do catering.
Selling black pudding to the...
No, we're talking about professional catering offshore. We've got Guyanese.
I'm not joking.
Yeah, we got Guyanese now that has built immense capacity to operate within the oil and gas sector, and actually have been able now to take some of those services outside. They've got their Guyanese companies now that are offering the services in Suriname and Trinidad out. Even there were Guyanese that were operating on vessels that were operating offshore Peru.
And before that was nil.
That was nil. We weren't even, what we don't understand is the reason why local content came, because we didn't even know what the opportunities were. We weren't able to know.
And nobody was saying.
The industry was guarded and protected. They were bringing their people in, and everybody been behind the scenes. Guyanese were completely oblivious to the opportunities. When we went on trade missions, we were able to see what the industry really has to offer, and that most of these countries or cities or states started from the same place that we started, right? You know, fishing tongues and that sort of thing, and they were able to convert into oil and gas industry, and they've done so because of local content, because they've instituted different levels of local content. And that is why it is so important that local content works, and we do not allow, because when we now allow a company to rent a citizen, they will definitely, remember, they're already a big company. They probably already had all the contracts. They now rent a citizen, they become local. They continue to get all the contracts. If they didn't rent a citizen, they had to get a good partner. You know, they've been able to attract maybe 3-4 persons. That money is retained. And you, of course, at the same time, you're able to now to get multiple companies, because you would force them into competition. You're able to get their competitor from somewhere else partnering on another Guyanese company. So you now have one big company partnering with Freddie Kissoon, one partnering with you. The work has to be split. Then you'd have 51% Guyanese here, 51% Guyanese there, and the money retains. More money retains in the country. More work is split. More development. More Guyanese will benefit.
So the employment thing with
employment, and it
if
will
100
help
companies are in Guyana right now from overseas, how many you say are using that backdoor rent a citizen, rent a columnist?
Rent the columnist?
I just think it's
if they pay me to write for them, Timothy, should I take it?
I don't know. They're just kidding you. But
it's
out of 100 companies.
It's when they ask me what to write about. I can't write things about Trinidad.
Out of 100 companies, how many of them are using that backdoor method to...
I wouldn't be able to say exactly.
Guesstimate.
I would say at least 10 to... I mean, at this point in time, we're assuming without knowing in depth, because I would say 10-15%. But
still significant.
No, but you know, as I said, 10-15%. But when 10%, or let's say 5%, when 5% really earns 95% of the revenue, then that 5% is a significant amount. Now, the Secretariat, I believe, is doing a very good job in trying to figure out.
There's a local content secretary.
The local content secretary is doing a very good job trying to figure out, you know, what are the back doors, what are the loopholes, and everything. They're crafting. They're in the process of drafting a new law with regulations, additional areas, increase the targets, and that sort of thing. So you have all of that coming on stream, you know, within the next few months, I assume. So you'd have it more regulated to the sense, but of course, we don't want it overly regulated, but we want to make sure that the rights and the opportunities of Guyanese are protected, and ensure that we are getting what we are due. So that's important, and I think that, you know, it's important that as Guyanese citizens that we do the right thing and we support the local content secretariat in their work, because it ultimately, this law is for Guyanese. It's not for government. This is for the business community. This is for Guyanese operating, wanting to work in the industry, because it also caters and ensures it caters for the level of Guyanese workforce within, because the law states 90% labor, right? 75% managerial, and of course 51% ownership. So it's good enough.
2 minutes remaining, Freddie.
Timothy, you have been someone who has established himself in Guyana as a person who knows about the pitfalls of business and the advantages with the new economy. If you were to say to the government, if you were to give any advice to the government on this takeoff, what WW was the takeoff, 5 stages of a country's economy we are now have taken off, what would you say to the government? What would you tell them to be careful about? What direction would you point them to?
I would tell the government, my primary thing would say to the government, SMEs is the growth of your economy.
What's SMEs?
Small and micro enterprises. Medium, well, you say MSMEs. Medium, small, and micro enterprises is what grows your country, sustains development. They come up with the industries that support every industry. They're the ones that grow your country, and you have to be able to find access to finance to help those companies grow. America was built. That's why they created the Small Business Association. That's why they created all the mechanisms. They actually passed a law in 1930 something that made sure that 20% of all commercial loans were given to a small business to grow America, to build America, to build. Most countries around the world realize that the backbone of the economy is the growth and the sustainability of micro, small, and medium enterprises. You have to focus on that. And unfortunately, in developing countries and third world countries, the middle class, the middle-sized businesses are always the forgotten one. People focus on those in poverty and, of course, those who are financing. And that is an issue I would say here. Be careful. Make sure that you grow the middle class, grow the SMEs, because the MSMEs, because those are the ones that when the oil prices drop, when the gold prices drop, your service industry, your small businesses are the ones, your manufacturers are the ones that are going to continue to push along your economy.
But there's a missing link in your delivery. How are you going to get Scotia to give the people loans?
I don't know, but Freddie Kissoon, quickly closing.
That's my closing remark.
Freddie, and to answer your question, I'm not God.
Ladies and gentlemen,
I can't make them do it.
You can't make them do it.
Ladies and gentlemen, some very healthy discussions tonight about some very serious issues being raised about things that are happening with our foreign currency within the country and what the government should be paying attention to. In my personal opinion, I don't believe that all is lost. I believe Guyana is well ahead of the game. I am very happy that we could be discussing these things, and it was through discussions that there was a big move towards the local content policy and subsequently the law that came about. Healthy debate that happened, but we should be continuously paying attention. Government has to pay attention too, because while I agree with Freddie, and I think it's a sentiment, so we are going to be very happy with the fact that over the years our neighbors have been very good to us. Suriname, Venezuela, Trinidad, Barbados, in terms of our people went there. But
Antigua,
all over the world.
1 out of every 5 Antiguan is a Guyanese.
But the fact is, we are at a particular time in our country where we have to pay attention and build this country for the long term, because there's always a feeling that oil is not going to be around forever. Where do you go from there? You have to build it. You have to retain and retain those foreign currency that come in, the investment, the capacity building of our people to expand the skills. But that has been a pretty good discussion here tonight. We're going to be back with you on Friday, Freddie and myself. I want to say on behalf of Freddie and myself, our gratitude to Mr. Timothy Tucker, who has been our first guest, and again, immediate past president of the Georgetown Chamber of Commerce and Industry,
and future politician.
And he's also been a big advocate for more rights and more leg room for our local businesses. Thank you very much, Mr. Tucker.
You think he's going to go into politics?
I don't know. We should ask him again when he comes.
You're going into politics?
I have no intention to.
Take care on the roadways. I saw some cutlass fighting today on Mandela Avenue after some road raids. Not very good. Let's keep it clean. Let us be careful. Save our people. Everyone that has lost us, somebody's brother, sister, mother, father. Let's take care. Until then.